Today on Best for Women Live, we are exploring the power of being vulnerageous. Now, if you don't know what that means, don't worry because we've got Dana Kaplan coming to join us to explain both the term, what it means, how you would use it, and all kinds of beautiful pieces around being vulnerageous. Now, she's going to be joining us in just a moment, but if we haven't met yet, hello and welcome to Best for Women Live. We're a podcast every Monday that talks about leadership, business development, and stress management. And why those three things? Because we know that whenever you're out dealing with other people, managing expectations, it adds a layer of stress to you and who you are. So these are the things that we bring together. My name is Brooke Gordon. I am the host, I am the founder, and I am really glad to have you here with me. Now, if you give me just a moment, I'm going to see if I can welcome Dana and have her hop on. Beautiful. I am seeing her. We're going to bring her in with the power of technology. Most of the time it works. I'm hoping it does today. Perfect. It's always so fun trying to navigate the tech while also have a chat with you and, your head's down, your head's up. But here we are. She is coming online and we are super excited to have her. So Dana, if you can hear me, you should have received a little invite and then you can click on that to come and join me. If you haven't had a chance to meet Dana yet, her passion is really around facilitation and education. It's around being able to be, there we go, we're going to try again, Dana. It's around being able to really connect with people. And so that's one of the reasons why I was so excited to have her on the show. We actually met through a previous guest. Some of you may remember Sophia Ruffalo, and she was the one who introduced us. And we have met through LinkedIn. So we are really excited to have Dana join us. Perfect. Dana Kaplan, indeed. Excellent. All right. I think we've got her here. We're going to add her in. Excellent. Now the fun of Instagram is always, will this work? And it is. Hello and
Oh
welcome,
my
my
God,
friend.
so much fun. All I heard was vulnerageous. And I was like, oh my God, does she know my word?
I was just saying, we are going to unpack it today, what it means if you are, how to put it in practice, all the things, because this is a new word that I learned from you just recently, actually. But
Thank you.
before we get into it, Dana, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited. I love this whole new leaping of faith around trusting that everything's going to come together, because I've never, like I shared, I've never done a LinkedIn Live, and not knowing that it needs to be on your mobile versus a computer, even though both are Apple. So this is exciting. I love learning.
It's been really fun. We are so glad to have you here. I mean, what's one of the risks of doing Instagram lives and podcast live is that the tech sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't. So for those of you who are going to watch the replay, we will do our best to edit that when we post it up on our website. But it just kind of is what it is. So, which is awesome.
And
Now, my friend, oh, go ahead.
To one of my core beliefs around being flexible and being open and available to learn new ways. And so I kind of feeds into a big reason I wanted to join you today. So it's great.
I love it. Well, why don't we start by having you briefly introduce yourself and what you do so that everyone gets a chance to meet you. And then we're going to dive into some pretty awesome conversations today. I'm excited for this.
I am a renowned retired classroom educator, now educator in the world. I never realized the impact of what I was teaching, that I was allowed to do it for myself also. Great awareness. And but what I left the classroom specifically because I researched the the power behind creating a compassionate culture for children. And when you can create for the first couple of weeks, months of school and focus on building who am I, self-investigation, what do I need, how do I learn, how do I communicate, and then taking that out into the world, the data proved that the kids were leaving, starting kindergarten, at 4 and 5 and leaving at 5 and 6 by age, but academically and intellectually, they were leaving anywhere from the end of second to the beginning of 4th or 5th grade for some. And so the power behind knowing who we are, knowing that there's no such thing as a glass ceiling, knowing that everyone learns independently and uniquely, and having the inner knowing to allow yourself as an educator, to allow yourself as a guide and a coach, and to let go of the ego, right? And to really jump in and leap in and help kids understand that the possibilities are infinite. And so along the way, I was supporting so many educators in schools and programs around New York City, and they were using my classroom and my way of teaching as a model for what they wanted and the energies that they wanted to be bringing into their spaces. However, there was a missing link, and the missing link is the ego. And so unless we can check our ego at the door and know that I'm not here, I'm stealing Brene Brown's line, we're not here to be right, we're here to get it right. And getting it right means being okay messing up, and I mess up a lot. And then, coupled with the fact that I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until 3 weeks before I left the classroom in 2018, it added also to my superpowers of doing all this work. And so my whole intention in the world is to really hold space and create environments and expansive arenas for kids and families and our entire humanity to have vulnerageous conversations around who am I, what am I, dismantling and disrupting the horrific stigmas and conscious and unconscious biases that we have in the world around learning and race and ethnicity and gender and everything that's encompassed. And so for me, what I do, it doesn't feel like work, because I love it, and it's my passion and my purpose in the world to make it a better place. So while I'm not in the traditional classroom, I will forever be an educator. It's just ingrained in me, and it's my heart. And actually, funny enough, a parent recently brought it out to my attention, that she's like, Dana, you do realize you've always been an educator in the world. And I was like, I don't understand. She's like, think about the amount of field trips that we would go on. And it was like 60 to 100 field trips a year. And I was laughing, and I was like, oh yeah, that's so true.
Right?
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, I've always been an educator in the world. So
I love that. And okay, so there's a few things I wanted to pick up on there, and we're going to keep coming back to this definition of vulnerageous. So hold off on that one, because I want to introduce that one well. But there was a couple things that you really talked about, and one of them is that courage to have left and transferred the knowledge that you had, the experiences that you had in a very structured, rigid environment, and recognizing that your way of doing things was the model, but still didn't fit. And creating, right? I see you laughing, right? But I don't think I'm wrong in that, right? And creating a new environment and a new open framework where you can bring it not just to those kids in that neighborhood who are enrolled and assigned to your class by the administration, but now bring it to a much broader audience. And the thing that you're bringing, if I'm hearing correctly, is this ability and toolkit and ways of expression and play and learning, so that little kids, and ultimately these tools, and we're going to get into this, work for humans at all ages, by this, sort of learning so that they can start off their whole life with confidence in who they are and being able to express themselves. Have I captured that well?
You have, because my belief at the core is we start in the playroom, not the boardroom. And if we were starting in the playroom, all of the problems, by the way, which are just unsolved riddles that we haven't quite mastered or discovered yet, all of the unsolved riddles would have been solved by now. So start in the playroom. We constrict. We tell kids exactly what they can play with. We allow them to only do what they want within our timeline. And when we give kids the opportunity, and I'm not saying it's a free-for-all, trust me when I say this, because kids must have routine. Parents must have routine. Humanity must have routine. But the confines of the routines and the structures of those routines, it really is embodying the idea of flexibility and knowing that what works today or what's working in an hour is not necessarily going to work today, later on today or tomorrow, or what have you. And that also leads us into life.
Yeah.
You know, I recently wrote about how school's starting. But the reality is we're always in school. School is just this construct that has been created, you know, that we learn from this month to this month, and then it's a free-for-all. And the reason it's so difficult for many of us to transition back into the school year or back into the fall, it's because we haven't normalized the fact that we're always learning. And if we make it so complex, it's always going to be complex. So let's make it easy, and let's make it accessible, and let's make it inclusive, because we all want to have fun, and we all just want to play, and we all want to learn. And the easier we can make that, the more we're going to do it.
Oh, I 100% agree. And I love that you keep bringing routine into it, because I think that's one of the reasons why back to school is so hard. And you talked about the free for all, you know, and I think about where I live, and you and I are, well, we're at least in the same time zone, different countries, but I think it's really important to note a little bit of the history of that education. It's specifically timed so that kids would be able to, both from an hours perspective and the months of the year, would be able to contribute to the family farm, right? It's at a time of you know, families living off the land, a time quite along, like, you know, we're talking hundreds of years ago, and this was all sort of established, and being able to send the kids off to get some education so that they could participate in the business world in some cases, and then they would need the summers off because they were working in the fields. But then once harvest was done, then they could come back. And so, you know, this sort of structure fit with the routine, fit well with the routine back then. And now we don't follow, very few of us follow that same routine, because we've now expanded our professions, and we've expanded our geographies and all these good things. So I find that just really interesting that you sort of touched on that idea of routine, and it started off with a great routine, and now it's not. It's structure versus free-for-all.
And that leads into the bigger concept of, are we going to stay on the ground and just expect everything to be, or can we actually, I use the analogy of sitting on top of the Empire State Building quite often. And the reason for it is to get as many perspectives as you can, right? And even though we're both sitting on top of the Empire State Building, what you're seeing and what I'm seeing is not going to be the same, because it's all around perception. Like it's all around, like, what are we perceiving? And it's all around the perceived arena that we're looking at, right? And the constraints that put on us as humans, be it in work, be it in, you know, for kids, be it for adults, be it our collective, we have to really think about what is going to be best for us, and being honest, and being selfish, and having selfish be a powerful word instead of an icky word. Like, I grew up thinking that selfish was icky and gross, and you're just a horrible human being if you're selfish. Now it's like, no, I'm not selfish. I'm doing exactly what I need to do in order to be the person that I want to be in the world. And when we can teach kids to embody that concept of selfishness means taking care of yourself, and when we can deconstruct and dismantle this perception of what selfishness is and means to adults also, then they're actually going to stand in their own power and work the way they need to work, provide the way they need to provide, and thrive the way they want to thrive.
I think selfish is also part of, I think about kindergarten, I think of sharing, right? You're taught to share, you're taught to have your turn, you start learning these rules, these etiquette rules in a way so that you can cope with being in school for the rest of your couple of years, right? So you learn sitting and being still and being quiet, but then also that's going to continue with you into the workplace, right? But I also think back to this idea of constraint. And I want to give a bit of an analogy of, that playroom instead of the boardroom. Starting a new project when you're literally given the beach to go and do some market research and explore and have all this ideation. And at the end, and I remember using this analogy within our own team, we came back to our supervisor and said, okay, we have had so much fun. We have run all over this beach, and we have decided that this is the sandbox where we know if we are all in the sandbox together, that we will be able to actually make some momentum and actually go forward. But we started with the whole beach, but we came back asking for a sandbox.
That's very interesting on my end, because it's affirming, because that is what sets me apart from all educators. I believe in finding your own way. I believe in navigating. And the concept of sharing is different from the concept of selfishness. Sharing is expressing, is articulating, is clarifying, is curiosity. Selfishness is, where am I neglecting myself and what do I need to do for myself right now? So even when you were in your play box, even when you made that sandbox yourselves, right? Your team shared how big do you want this sandbox to be. And then you were also able to have your own personal space within that sandbox. Because what I've discovered about myself is, as much as I am an extrovert and an abundance of energy, I'm also very much an introvert. And I desire and crave my alone time. And I am no longer ashamed about it. And I used to think there was something wrong with me around like meetings and just don't talk to me. And it's actually a gift. It's a gift that we give ourselves. And so I think what you're bringing forward is really and truly a huge missing link into so many opportunities for our collective to thrive. Because again, you were given a free-for-all. It's kind of like Lord of the Flies, right? And you consciously collaborated in order to build this compassionate community.
Yeah.
And that's what the fundamental core of all of my work is about.
Okay, tell me a little bit more about that, because I love these. I love where you're going with this, and I love this definition. And just quickly, I want to share a story, because just yesterday, one of our past guests, Ellen, went on this 6-hour silence retreat. And she's a little apprehensive about doing it, but she shared how much, because I asked her, you got to tell me all about it. And I know she'll be happy to share this, because it was really interesting. She's also an educator, so she'd been teaching, right, in meetings all day and talking, and she was really looking forward to having this time where she just didn't have to talk to anybody. And we don't think about that, right? And for me, there are days, most people know me as being really, outgoing and connecting people, but there are times when I just don't want to, and there'll be times when you can't get a hold of me, and it's with intention. I'm not going to answer because I'm not ready to be present and reply to you, so I'm just not going to.
So that I admire your choice in giving that distance between yourself and others. So I had Maxillofacial surgery a year ago in July, and I was forced not to talk. So today I prepared. I had a meeting first thing this morning at 8:30 till 9:30, and I haven't spoken since because I knew that I would be talking with you now. So already, the tightness in my face is reoccurring. Like, I feel the muscles in my face. And so for me, there are moments when I have to remind myself this is about my holistic healing. And it's not an excuse. And stop making a reason to stop talking to people. Where you're putting that practice into place. And so it's a huge celebration on your end. And I hope that everyone that's listening is really taking that piece in, because I look forward to no longer justifying why am I being silent, right? I always justify squashing myself, keeping myself small, not taking up space. But I never justify, and now I'm recognizing where I'm justifying staying silent. And I look forward to, I'm taking up space now. I am no longer shrinking, right? Mm-hmm. And the next step is really to just be silent when I want to be silent and not respond and not feel like, oh my God, every time I get a text, I've got to respond to it. And it's something that I've been working on, and it is work.
Oh,
I'm going to be
what's work?
Transparent. It is work. When I was in the classroom, my older brother's a lawyer, and he would work till 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, and he'd be like, Dana, I'm paid to do this. You are not. Why are you still up? And I was like, oh my God. And, because the parent emailed me, I got to respond. I got to do this. Like, and even friends texted me over the weekend, and I was just like, Jewish holiday. What am I doing? Why am I responding? And then I was like, why are you justifying? Like, what are you doing? Like, stop.
Yeah. It's okay. One of my favorite text messages that I ever got was from one of my girlfriends. She said, I just want to let you know, if I don't respond to your text right away, I'm okay. I'm choosing when I take time to reply to things. And I was like, this is my favorite text message I have ever gotten, ever. This is like, I was filled with so much joy from her. And now, if I haven't heard from her for 2 or 3 days, I'll still send like a little happy face just to, make sure that my text floats back up to the top and make sure she's okay, because I still love her and I worry about her. But I'm also, if she doesn't get back to me for a day or two, it's fine, right? But she set the parameter and expectation that I'm not going to get back to you for a day or two.
That's amazing. Wait, is that an automated thing that she created?
No, she just wrote a text to everyone and just said, listen, this is a choice that I've decided to make. I'm just letting you know, if you don't hear back from me right away, I'm okay. I'm just choosing not to reply. And
it needs to be a massive post-it everywhere.
Isn't that great? And it reminds me a little bit, because there are automated ones that you get. I don't know if you remember, you mentioned you had an Apple product, and it would text people while you're driving to say, listen, Brooke is driving, she'll get back to you later. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about you automatically doing that, but yeah, I kind of like that. It's not a bad idea.
I kind of want one that says, Dana's really busy in her life right now doing Dana. She'll get back to you when she can.
So I think there's settings for that. We can talk about that offline, because there's all kinds of settings now that you can set what status you're in, and then it can trigger all kinds of workflow. So I actually think that's a thing. But before we get there,
on my brain, that would be so amazing for me.
Awesome. So digging into tech, I know we weren't really going to dig into, but I think it also ties into this idea that sometimes it's really helpful to have systems in place to support you, right? You touched a little bit on routine. We're talking about, like, could we actually automate some things to basically say, I'm not talking to you right now. Email does that with autoresponders. And this idea of setting up some parameters and boundaries, not to be selfish in the negative connotation, but to be selfish so that we can restore and fill our own cup, so that we can come back ourselves and consistent with ourselves and our full selves. Is this?
Yes, and it actually leads into the bigger topic of neurodiversity. We think so I am so progressive in my thinking, a very forward thinker. Everyone has always had their own brain. I've always taught to individuals, like, there's never been a time that I don't know how to not do that, even when I'm speaking to thousands of people at a time. Like, they can still feel like they're the only person in the room when I'm talking with them. And it's because of organization, right? It's organization of where's my attention. It's organization of how am I feeling right now in order to give you my attention, right? And I say organization because it's executive functioning. And if our executive functioning is not of the highest consciousness, of the highest level of awakening, then we're going to make choices and do things that aren't helping us, right? And so, yes, it's about organization. It's also about self-awareness and self-investigation. Why am I not organized right now? Why am I choosing to be, right?
Spinning your wheels, overcommitting yourself, right? All the things that we know we do.
Yeah, and so I think it's all encompassed. And until we can destigmatize, all the labels and limits that come to us when we think about neurodiversity. You and I are both neurodiverse. You don't need a diagnosis. Yes, I do have a diagnosis, but you don't need a diagnosis to know that your brain is different from mine. My brain is different from yours. What you need to organize yourself and what you need to light up your life is going to be completely different. And that is awesome. Let's celebrate those pieces instead of consciously putting them down and making, the collective humans, our humanity, feel less than. And the way that we can, again, create this compassionate collective that I know it exists. I know in my soul it exists. The way we do that is through asking curious questions. What do you need right now when we're working together? Is this a good time to talk? Checking in with one another. That's all part of a routine. It's all part of being organized. It's all part of being compassionate and curious. And those are the elements. Those are the scientific elements.
I love this. And I think you bring such an interesting point, because in the work that I do, especially the coaching work, you started off talking about the fact there is no glass ceiling. And while there shouldn't be, in practice, there are restrictions that you come up against. And it's behavioral and it's expectation driven. And it's, what does someone expect an executive woman to be or do? And then next thing you know, when you don't meet their imagined picture of what that should be, then suddenly you have people who are being,
I just got the chills.
right? But people get held back, and they do end up having these barriers that they reach, which are real and physical, and have to do with other people's, we'll use the term bias, expectation, imagining of what they should be or should be doing. And the flip side to that is, within a corporate culture, just this idea of, do you have time to talk? And it's something that, I work with a few people where that is a thing, and it's beautiful, and I always appreciate it. And I will make time for them because I know that they are coming from a place, right? But then there's the flip side of that, where it just has to get done. And you're trying to find a meeting spot to get these 6 people in a room together, and everyone's schedule's all over the place. And you start losing that ability to have control over your time, to have control over that executive functioning or the preparation you need, right? That selfish, literal preparation that you need to be in your highest form of executive functioning. Instead, you work from a place of distress due to stress, right? And now you're making not necessarily the best decisions, but you're still maybe accountable for important decisions. And so this is how these things for me end up manifesting and trickling up in a corporate setting. And then you try to bring that back to the individual, and then working with them to say, okay, well, this is what I have in my control, and this is what I don't. And I just need to cope with, literally, I need to find coping mechanisms to deal with these things that are not in my control.
So I would actually offer a wondering curiosity from my end. When you're working with your collective, either one-on-one or in groups or what have you, and you're bringing the business forefront, these are the tasks that we must get done right now, because tasks are for all ages. My nephew right now, his task is to discover how to use a straw versus his bottle. He's 13 months old. That's his task right now.
Which is huge, Dana, because it's the difference between sucking from a fixed environment, like a bottle where it's an enclosed environment, versus a straw where you have to it's an open fluid, right? And you have to sort of figure out both the mouth dynamic. Oh, it's so fun.
I know. So that's why I bring this up. It doesn't matter our age. Like when people are like, Dana, what ages do you work with? I'm like, I work with all ages, because at the end of the day, I will forever be a kindergarten teacher. My heart and soul is in kindergarten. Our 5-year-old self comes out at any point in time. Let's just be real and honest. So the task that we're asking people to do, we also, as a leader, as a conscious, thoughtful, compassionate leader, we have to ask ourselves, am I asking this person to do something that they actually can do? Or am I asking them to do something that I'm going to watch them fail? The amount of times that I've had people in my life set me up to do tasks that they knew were outside of my wheelhouse, i.e. technology. I looked at them and I would consciously say, you know, my expertise are here. Are you asking me to challenge myself and to enrich myself and to push myself and to show myself all the things that I can do? Or is your purpose something different? And that is a really important stop to pause moment for all of us, because, and I really mean stop and pause, because if we're not stopping to pause and ask ourselves, okay, do I want to learn how to do this? Is this something I'm interested in? Where's my bandwidth? That task, doesn't matter what it is, it's either going to be an infinite opportunity or a mass destruction. And I like to look at them as infinite opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes, my 13-month-old nephew, he has no idea what's going to happen, so he's just going to have to do it. He's just going to have to play, right? Let's play. But unless we have that mentality of let's play all the time, which again sets me apart from so many, because I'm all about play. If it's not fun, I don't want to do it. This was fun figuring out how to go onto go onto an Instagram live with you. This was fun. Like, I want to do it again. Like, if it wasn't fun, I don't want to do it.
Yep.
And that's a big piece. And so asking your players, when you're giving them a task, where's your play level?
Oh, that's an interesting one, because there are some people who don't know, and some people who don't remember how to play, right? The other piece that I love that you bring into that with the pausing, asking these very curious and questions to challenge the situation, right? And the outcomes, right? Getting clarity on the outcomes. I really like that. I also really, really like how you bring in, when you're talking about bringing people in together, this idea of fun, this idea of joy, because you and I both know that one of the greatest combatants to stress is joy, right? Joy and gratitude. These are feelings that are difficult to hold mutually with stress, because your body physically reacts in completely different ways when you experience both. And so when you're bringing joy, you're bringing fun, you're bringing a sense of play into the work that you're doing, it's not stressful. I've had to deal with something like this before. It's like, okay, I had a backup plan. We were going to hop on a Zoom and then post it and celebrate afterwards. Like, there's a plan for everything, right? And it's okay. It's not stressful, because you know that you have options, but it's also not stressful because it's like, okay, well, let's figure it out together.
It is. And actually, a new friend created a podcast about joy. And I, from the moment I met her, we met online, we haven't met in person. And it is, I always go back to joy. What makes me happy? What is not making me happy? And now it's my responsibility to do something about it. And, it encompasses literally everything that we've talked about in order to be the vulnerageous human beings that we're allowed to be. We also have to be really curious about who we are and where we're preventing ourselves from experiencing joy, and where are we proving, and where are we shrinking and doing all of these different pieces that are actually not who we are and what we're supposed to be doing, right? And so when we can be in a place like the beast and go buck wild in a safe way, consciously, right? Knowing that there's a reason I'm playing right now, and yes, I'm having fun. There's something that I'm going to get out of this play that is completely different than playing Monopoly or pickleball or, running around on a basketball court. There's something imaginative. And I think that also goes back to the foundation of where's our imagination these days? Where are we constricting our imagination? Where are we constricting our creativity? Where are we not playing full out? And I think that's the biggest question.
Oh, I love that. We're at time, my friend, and so I'm going to ask you in your final words. Can you explain to us what is vulnerageous?
So, I was recently back in Wisconsin I went to college there in Madison, and my intention was to be always, since 5 years old, to be the best dressed kindergarten teacher in the world. And so I went to Madison with the intent, and at the time it was one of the top rated education schools, and I didn't get in, and I was gutted, absolutely gutted. And the reason I didn't get in is because of test anxiety and a test score. And keeping in mind, no, I had 0 diagnoses yet. I since graduating, I kept wanting to go back, but I wasn't really sure why. I really wasn't sure why. And then this opportunity came about for me to attend this Play, Make, Learn symposium. And I'm sitting there, and the first class is actually in the educational building. And I was having anxiety. And I was like, isn't this ironic? It's put on through, the program was put on through the educational space, but I did not know that the pre-workshops were going to be in the education building. And so I walk in and I was like, oh my God. And so I sit down and we're in the middle of this talk around failure and how to teach kids. And failure is not a concept in my head. Failure is simply just the act of not trying. And so the leader said to me, she goes, you are quite vulnerageous. And I was like, I know, I am so vulnerable and courageous, because honestly, I could throw up right now sitting in this building, fully knowing that I thought I was supposed to go here and I could teach your class right now. And I was like, oh, and I'm also not being very humble. And she goes, now that is the most vulnerageous conversation we can have, because when you know you're meant to be someplace and you're not going, that's your ego. And I was like, okay. So vulnerageous is really and truly, it's the idea of courageously doing the most vulnerable acts that you are so scared, and know that the only opportunity is to trust.
Oh, and in that moment, what I love is that you've given us all kinds of examples, like stop and pause and go out and play. And you've given actual cueing, you've given examples. Dana, thank you for making this so practical together. I've loved this conversation. Thank you for coming as my guest, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me.
My absolute pleasure. To everyone who's been watching, thank you for joining us. We will be posting the replay. You can always find it in Reels, but you can also find it on bestforwomen.ca/podcast. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.